He was prepared to sacrifice his entire personal reputation for his country winning a World Cup.
Ivory Coast national team, Leicester City, of course, Guangzhou, and then a few spells in Shanghai. Finished up managing the Philippines in 2019, which is just
wild. Yeah, it's just a crazy result. Even whether you watch the highlights or you just see the scoreline, nothing that has happened in the 23 years since, I don't think, has been so like, whoa. Hello and welcome along to Not Another Sports Pod, episode 10 with myself, David, and Mr. Ollie Wilson. Ollie, let's dive in with the big breaking news of this Monday morning, Ollie, and that's that Sven Göran Eriksson, former England manager, has passed away at the age of 76. Ollie, I want to dive straight in with the football here. Has there been a better standalone England result for the men's team since Germany won, England 5 in September 2001? Since then, have we ever seen a better individual result in the 23 years after that for the England men's team?
Probably not. In terms of, I'm trying to think of like major tournaments, big sides that England haven't really vanquished before, have we? You know, we've scraped past some of the bigger sides and in important games, and we've had, you know, lucky runs being on the right side of the last couple of draws as well, when you consider the World Cup success that Southgate had, and obviously the Euros as well this summer. But I think the England 5, Germany 1 in Munich scoreline was made even more kind of prevalent by the fact of what had happened previously when we took on Germany, when Kevin Keegan, I think that was his last game in charge. It was the last game at Wembley. Yeah. I want to say the old Wembley was the Twin Towers, because we had the two towers outside it. But it seems weird to say Twin Towers now, obviously, because culturally we've come to associate that phrase with something very different indeed. But that was the last game before those were torn down, obviously, and the revamped Wembley was built. And England fans wanted nothing more than a World Cup qualifier to sign out of Wembley Stadium, such a historic venue, recognisable around the globe because of the way it was built, the way it looked, and so close to kind of the success of hosting Euro 96 and how close we'd come against Germany then. To sign out of that stadium with the England national team beating Germany, it would have been great. And instead we got this horrible dour performance. Was it a Didi Hamann free kick from like long range that never really should have beaten a keeper from that sort of distance? And it was into the bottom corner.
Because that's the trivia question, isn't it?
Yeah, last goal at
Wembley. The
last
player to score at the old Wembley.
Yeah, and it was miserable. So then to go to Munich and put on, and honestly, I'll tell you now, I didn't watch that full game. I was away on holiday, and we turned up to a bar because my dad had been like, "Look, we're just going to get battered. Like, why would I want to sit and watch England get battered in Munich? Like, that'd be terrible. We're on holiday to have a good time." And we walked past this bar, and it's 3-1. It's like, what on earth is going on? And we sat down, obviously you get like the Heskey goal at the end and he's doing the little DJ celebration. And it was just a wonderful turning point it was a seed sown of hope for England's international football side, which we hadn't had for a long time, not since probably France 98, I guess, with Glenn Hoddle. So as an individual result, and probably what it meant for a manager going forward and for an England team going forward, that's one of the biggest that we'll see, I think, in our lifetime. I think as well because the rivalry with Germany was still considered a rivalry at that point for some reason. We'd had Euro 2000 with Charleroi and the kind of like problems with the police down there and beating them in Belgium 1-0 with an Alan Shearer goal. But like for some reason that rivalry was still there because of Euro 96 and because of Italia 90 and obviously history in the past as well. But it's also probably about as good as it got because it then became optimism. And optimism as an England football fan always leads to inevitable disappointment at major tournaments. And you can say what you want.
Quite a lot of hubris as well in the 23 years that followed. Like, I think, but isn't it kind of weird though, Ollie, that, you know, Gareth Southgate's taken us to 2 finals and yet there's no match, there's no individual game that Southgate oversaw that can really scratch the surface of Germany 1, England 5. Do you know what I mean? As in,
it's emphatic.
Even
though,
now,
isn't it?
yeah, I know. Yeah, it's just a crazy result. Even whether you watch the highlights or you just see the scoreline, nothing that has happened in the 23 years since, I don't think, has been so like, whoa, like that's insane. That's a massive result.
Well,
So
it's
Sven's
because
always got that, as a lasting.
it's because as well as there was a revenge aspect of it, of like you ruined the last game at Wembley for us, so we're gonna go into your back garden and decimate you. And it was like England battered them, particularly in that second half, absolutely tore them apart. So there was an air of like it was a vendetta that was resolved rather quickly just after, which I think was important motivationally for the England side at that time. And how often do you see those kind of results in big meetings between international sides anyway? I mean, Spain have obviously done it on a few occasions, and they've had some cracking games, for instance, against the Italians at major tournaments in the last decade or so. But there aren't many times where you see a big international side completely vanquish the other so easily. And I think that's why it stands out.
Yeah, I think as well, Sven being England's men's first overseas coach kind of opened a certain like more international door to the men's national team for better or for worse, you could say. And also, Ollie, I mean, when I just watched the highlights back actually, and Peter Brackley was doing comms on one of the highlights packages, and I think he's passed away. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
Like, but it's just that lovely old school voice, really, really beautiful. So yeah, just finally on Sven, Ollie, we can talk about his wider career if you want, but I just want to venture off the beaten path a little bit. I saw a clip of Sven kind of talking about the end of his life and just the stoicism that some people find when faced with death. I find really like peaceful and inspirational. Like he's sat in his back garden in Sweden, and I think there's like some kind of Amazon documentary. I've only seen the clip, not the whole thing. And Sven's pointing at like this, hill in the Swedish countryside across the water. And he's saying like, oh, my father grew up around there and I went to school like there and I want my ashes like scattered here. And I don't know, man, the stoicism some people find in the face of death is just like, is all inspiring. Like it's just part of, they just accept that it's part of life. And I don't know, it's kind of nice.
It had also been, he's had his health problems, his battle with cancer for a long time now, I think, as well. So it's, you never want to say it was on the cards, you were expecting it, but I think there's been an element of like, this hasn't come as a surprise because we've known that he's been unwell for a long period of time. And I think if you have that long build up to it, maybe it's easier as on an individual level to kind of go through that grieving process and prepare yourself for it. I do want to just touch on his career quickly in terms of, we had a quick chat before we started recording this about Sven Göran Eriksson, and I still think it was fine as an England manager. We had an incredible group of players at that time. That Brazil side that beat us in the World Cup was far better. I would always say that, and think the best side went through. Whether you wanted to say that Ronaldinho did it with a fluke or not, is a different
Something
question.
that Ollie Wilson referenced he referenced this in a highlight show, by the way. It's so good. Ollie does this. We both do this highlight show for some South American football. And I was listening to a clip of Ollie's and he referenced Ronaldinho's goal in a show about something completely different. But the goal looked very similar. Some goals just hit home, man. And it was great. I loved it.
And it's one that'll always stick with you. It's like Naeem from the halfway line. That image of Seaman backpedaling to deal with that goal just stays there in your head from such a young age. That's probably one of my first football memories, I think. But I think the England aspect will maybe be looked over with that kind of shining light of, Southgate's going to have it. He's going to be revered in 20 years' time more than he is at this point as an England manager, particularly if there's not much success coming down the line afterwards. But I think we do revere Sven's England side a little too much because of the golden generation aspect. But there's some big achievements in his career. UEFA Cup victory with IFK Gothenburg in 1982, when UEFA Cup was a proper cup and teams from all around Europe were on such a level playing field that you could. But still, to do it with IFK Gothenburg is impressive indeed. Won Lazio the title in 2000, when Lazio and Roma went kind of back-to-back in winning Serie A. Won a Coppa Italia with Roma as well. I mean, he's produced some pretty big moments for various club sides in his individual career. A UEFA Super Cup winner, a Cup Winners' Cup runner-up in 98, Cup Winners' Cup winner in 99 with Lazio. And I think that Lazio time is probably actually when he was at the peak of his powers. And you think about the Lazio side he had at that point. He had Hernan Crespo, Christian Vieri, Juan Sebastian Veron. I think that was Pavel Nedved era as well, Marcelo Salas. I mean, quality, international quality throughout. And Sven Göran Eriksson took that and did a lot with it. And I think that's why he then got that England job and didn't really do as much as he did with Lazio. He was a great coach at certain times in his career, for sure. Managed some of the biggest sides in Europe at that point. Benfica as well. Obviously had a spell with Roma too. It's an interesting one because you could look back on it too much and go, not great with England in the end. Kind of one of those success but still failures. But actually go a bit deeper into his club career and it's quality.
Also, Ollie, so Sven's farewell tour, right? Which I really, really rate. You know, the last year, he's sort of obviously he's known he's on his final stretch, and he's been trying to fulfill his dreams and go around all these grounds and that kind of thing. I kind of get the sense that if Ollie Wilson was told he had a year to live, he'd be at Galatasaray Fenerbahce with the away fans, and he'd be at San Siro the next weekend and La Bombonera the weekend after. So there's something really football about Sven Göran Eriksson's farewell tour, which I just really rate. You know what I mean? He's got his bucket list. He's just a football guy, and he's still got his football bucket list, and he's trying to tick them off, which I respect. Also, the most unlikely looking ladies' man in the beautiful game as well, which there's something to that as well. We had a pre-pod chat about that, which we'll keep for the archives.
Yeah, I mean, Sven could perform on and off the pitch from the sounds of it. Let's put it that way. So let's go through quickly this managerial career. Like Gothenburg, Benfica, Roma, Fiorentina, Benfica, Sampdoria, Lazio, England, City, Mexico national team, Ivory Coast national team, Leicester City, of course, Guangzhou, and then a few spells in Shanghai. Finished up managing the Philippines in 2019, which is just
wild.
There are some places and some you start that list and it is creme de la creme, particularly at that point, that time, that era. Italian football popping off. Benfica, huge side, obviously. City after the England job, okay, not the City that we know now, very different, but still Premier League football, etc. And then it goes into this international merry-go-round. Mexico, Ivory Coast, Leicester, off to China for a bit and finishing up in the Philippines is... but I think that's also a sign of somebody that just loves the game, isn't it? And that's what you want from managers and players. It's interesting when you see players that say, I don't watch football, I don't like football, I'm just good at it. Sven Göran Eriksson wasn't one of those guys. He was I like football a lot. I'm into this sport more than anything else.
And I think when you talk about the trophies he won, Ollie, as well, that's always... ultimately, the sport is about moments and trophies and memorable things that will outlive you. And the fact that he did pick up trophies, I just think means his name will resonate for longer. It's I don't know whether you saw Rafa Benitez on Sky's The Overlap podcast recently, and Rafa Benitez gets a lot of stick in England and stuff. But the fact that he can be 2 La Liga titles with Valencia and Champions League with Liverpool, all this stuff will eventually, in the fullness of time. Other stuff gets forgotten because people just look back in 50 years and be like, Jesus, he did that, and that. He won those things. So, I think the trophies is really big.
It's about, but you look at Rafa Benitez, it's also about the moves you make in terms of, he made that move to go to Chelsea, right? And that killed his reputation. As soon as the fat Spanish waiter chant came out and you're the caretaker manager at Chelsea at that time, it's a tough thing to shake off, that kind of level of public humiliation for... It's
fucking rude.
Outstanding manager.
It's right on the border, Ollie. The fat Spanish waiter is right on the border of what you can get away with these days.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? It's you can't call someone fat, really. You can't have 40,000 people singing you're fat to someone. And you can't use someone's nationality against them in a derogatory way.
Borderline
and the waiter is... Mate, it's the whole thing. It's fat-phobic, it's xenophobic, and it's class, whatever that is, classist.
Yeah.
You're saying a waiter... fat Spanish waiter. And at the time it was kind of, oh, ha, 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 ha. But when you look back now, it's things that age badly, right? It's you fucking 40,000 people chanting fat Spanish waiter. It's so out there, man. I still think it's probably just on the line of what you can sing in a football ground, but it's fucking close.
I think we found the 1-minute clip to clip off this for this week. Dave Windsor's soapbox rant for 60 seconds is going to be, you can't...
Woke Windsor.
Yeah. Rafa Benitez's reputation sullied because of idiots. Absolute brain-dead idiots calling him a fat Spanish
But mate, in
waiter.
that, if anyone has a chance to listen to even a clip of Rafa Benitez on the Overlap, what's crazy, Ollie, is the guy is still bitter about a throw-in in 2007 when they were 2-1 down away at like Leeds. Like it's really like, holy shit, these some coaches really like live and breathe this stuff.
Oh,
Like, and he's got an excuse and a reason why everything didn't work. And he's had like a crazy successful career that you could never have predicted, but he's still bitter about loads of stuff. It's great. Great talker.
It's the same as these American football coaches that there are guys that you'll say, okay, third and 10 against Tampa Bay 4 years ago. And what play did you run? It was the third quarter. And these guys will be able to recall and recount the play, the yards, the time that it took, and all this stuff, and then go again. They just know it. These managers are just they live and breathe it. The good ones live and breathe it, and can't. It's not a job that you can like go home and leave at the door. It's there, and
it's unbelievable. Yeah.
It must be tough. It must be tough having that running through your head day in, day out.
Well, he's obviously never forgotten loads of it. And just on Rafa, just because it kind of ties in slightly with Sven, and you'll always remember Sven for the 5-1. I know you're a Milan fan, Ollie, you won't like this, but I mean, that 3-3 against Milan, you're talking about that in 100 years' time, and what a legacy, like unbelievable. Should we talk Premier League, mate?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't mind then starting with Liverpool and what you thought of your Liverpool side this weekend, and first chance for the new boss out on home soil at Anfield, and yeah, like a solid 2-0 victory over a Brentford side that is meant to struggle this season. But Arne Slot kind of gets to experience Anfield for the first time on a proper stage. And yeah, I'd just like to know what you think about and how difficult it is for a new manager like him to step in when everybody still, I think, probably involved in the club just wants it to still be Klopp's club.
Yeah, I think there's two things that I want to say here, Ollie. First of all is that this perceived wisdom, which is understandable because it's pattern recognition, is that when a great head coach leaves, a great successful head coach, the following years won't be as good, right? That's just, everyone knows that from football. Everyone's got a reference point of that for your club. When a legend leaves, because it's so rare for a head coach to leave on their terms. Like, Jurgen Klopp was never sacked. Like, who does that happen to? Do you know what I mean? Mainz, Dortmund, Liverpool. He's never been sacked. Like, that is unbelievable. Never happened. So I think the perceived wisdom is always, it's going to be crap. This is true of, post-Wenger, post-Ferguson. Every club's got an example of this. But there's another point here, Ollie, which is like, well, what if it actually gets better? Like, is that beyond the realms of possibility? It's still the same squad that won, like, everything, really. It's still the bulk of the same squad. So is there no chance that actually, like, Klopp maybe underachieved with the squad he's got? Like, I'm not saying that's true, but like, is that possible? Like, the squad that he's got actually maybe, and we're only 2 games into the season, is there any chance that maybe a new coach could squeeze more out of these players, not less? Like, that doesn't even seem to be part of the conversation, and that is possible. I'm not saying it's probable because it's not, but I don't know. Like, it's not impossible. Or certainly some players will be better under Slot than they were under Klopp, because that's just a different managerial style. So there's that, Ollie. And the second point I wanted to make is, isn't that fascinating that the only Premier League not to make any signings? And apparently, I think it's like 10 or 15 years since a Premier League club's gone into a new season without making a single inward signing. And I think it's really unusual in this day and age, but there's also something to be said for that in football and in life. Like, don't just go and fucking spend money because everyone around you's spending money. Like, if you don't, do you know what I mean? You can just not spend money. Like, that is an option too. So yeah, those are my 2 points on Liverpool. 2 wins and 2. I'm not sure you can take much from it apart from it looks good.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying not spend money to a man that probably puts more money into buying golf equipment than anything else. So it's very difficult for me to understand that not spending money. You don't have to spend money thing. But I actually really like it as well in terms of every manager that comes into a big club, right? Chelsea, time in, time out, whoever comes in, I want to spend. City, Pep, spending, and continues to spend. And I don't necessarily consider that being a good manager. I consider that being a guy that knows what he wants. Being a good manager is getting the best out of players that you have, rather than and designing a system around that, as opposed to coming in and bringing your system and needing wholesale changes. And to go back to your point about maybe actually a manager can get something out, what do we hear so much about sides that win titles and are consistent winners, that you need to revamp the squad to keep things fresh and new so the players don't get stagnant? Well, there's actually nothing fresher and newer than bringing in a different manager. So the players won't get stagnant because they've got to impress the new boss. They've still got to all fight for their playing positions, and they've got to learn and adapt to the style and his training methods and the style of football that he wants to play. So I'd be very impressed if Arne Slot comes in, as he has done, doesn't pick up anybody else in the latter part of this window, and works with what he's got. And if he's successful, that to me makes him arguably a better manager than most managers in the Premier League, because it's managing. It's not buying your way out of trouble and buying your way into the system that you want to play. It is doing what a proper old school football manager had to do, which is work tactically with the system and with the players that you've got. So yeah, I'm no Liverpool fan for sure, but any side that doesn't go splashing the cash and trying to buy their way to success, I'm more than happy to get behind. Same with Brighton and Hursler. You know, there's a story that going around that he's been allowed to get close last season to the club, to training sessions when De Zerbi was still in charge, and he was kind of being given this opportunity to take the reins in the way that he wanted to and see what he was getting into and being lined up for this Brighton job. And I think that's a really smart move as well. If you're a Premier League side and you think there's a chance that maybe your manager, and De Zerbi did a really good job, obviously, with Brighton, but if you can see somebody that you want to bring in instead, why not let them just get a little closer to the club, see what you've got? You don't have to show your hand completely, but you can see what they think about it, how they would maybe change it already. It's almost like a long-term job interview, which for managerial positions, I don't think there's anything better than doing. And look, they got a fairly fortuitous victory over Manchester United this weekend. I mean, I love that Danny Welbeck scored, and is it 5 goals now against United? The most. I mean, the stat has been trolled around all weekend. It's the player who's departed United and scored the most goals against them since leaving, which is superb.
Mate, I love James Milner still being involved as well.
Yeah.
Like, he's on course to break the appearance track. I mean, it's incredible that he's still floating around.
7 years older than his manager.
Fucking tops.
7 years older than his manager. I mean, it's crazy. Although Hursler apparently was managing in Germany when he was 26 in the 5th tier of German football. And it's like, how are you managing a football club? And he was like, apparently just became one of the boys. He used to play cards with the players after training and stuff like that, so that they would he'd integrate with them. And it wasn't necessarily the respect, but in that kind of, I'm your boss, I'm older than you, you do what I want. It was the respect of, oh, he's a good guy. Yeah, we'll do what he needs to do. And again, that's a smart way. Knowing how to read people should come into football management as much as anything else.
If I'm not wrong, Ollie, Andrei Villas-Boas was manager of the Faroe Islands at 21. Someone's got one of our law listeners, maybe Mr. Wills or the Wilcos, can call me out here. But if I'm not wrong, Villas-Boas was like manager of the Faroe Islands at 21. Something absurd. Obviously, like the Faroe Islands, in a pretty small population, but there we go. But I completely agree, by the way, about the new. You know, when a new coach comes in, there's so much new there. Do you really need like 7 signings to throw into the mix? Like, I think it's very smart. Like, you've just moved into a new home, right, Ollie? There's something to be said for living in a home for 6 months before you start like ripping down walls and building extensions and like, you know, putting in skylights. Like, what? Just live there for 6 months. Like, just take it in and then decide. What do you think of that analogy?
No, yeah, see what works and see what doesn't. And then if you need to rip the kitchen out, you rip the kitchen out. And okay, we need a new tap. We need a new back door. We need to sort the flooring out. These are all, I'm just listing problems now with the house rather than anything to do with an analogy with the football club. But yeah, that's what we've got to get done. We've got to sort out the patio. All right, okay. But with a good patio, we can get a strong base, and then we've got some nice furniture that we can put on top. It makes it look nice, and we're banging in 6 goals a week. I think that's where you're going with that one anyway.
100%, yeah. And then as a final touch, you buy the nice lamp, which you don't need, which is like the second left back from, right. Right, we're not going down a half-hour tangent where we start reflecting footballing positions and roles to items in the household. No, but one of the best descriptions I've ever heard of a footballer is Adam Lallana is like a scarf in May. Like, you don't need it, but it kind of looks nice. Like, that's one of the best descriptions of a footballer I ever heard. Adam Lallana, like a scarf in May. I just want to talk about the Premier League title race, Ollie, because I saw Jamie Carragher make this point. I thought it was super interesting. Arsenal's last 5 seasons coming into this season, Ollie, their points total has been 56, 61, 69, 84, and 89. So the trajectory of the last 5 seasons, their points total has gone up on each of those seasons, right? And to win the league, it's going to have to go up again. In those same 5 seasons, Manchester City have averaged 88 points. So you know exactly what Manchester City are going to do this year. They're going to average 88 points. It might be 90, it might be 86, but it's going to be basically within 2 or 3 points of that 88 average.
Mm-hmm.
So for Arsenal to win the league, they're going to have to, for a 6th successive season, increase their points total. That's tough. That's not something people will talk about in 100 years' time. It's not a trophy. It's not good enough, etc., etc. It's not, doesn't mean they've won the title. But if they were to go and get 91 points this season, Ollie, and still lose the league, I mean, it'd be tough on Arteta and tough on Arsenal.
I thought you were coming out, considering the home and football stuff we've just done a few seconds ago. I thought this was going to be an analogy about getting a mortgage. Oh, you've gone up again. You've gone up again. You've gone up again. Yeah, now you can get it. Now you can get the Premier League.
Interest rates keep rising.
No, it's I think it is tough. You would look at last season's Arsenal side and say there's not much else they can do. Like they ran City the full length of the season. You'll look at individual moments quite clearly, but at the end of the day, they're hitting a ceiling as well. I think an 88 points for a Premier League title is pretty much quite a good ceiling anyway, especially if you're going into a 2-horse race where there's a chance to, obviously you could drop 6 points to your title rivals but still make it up elsewhere if they stumble in a few other places, etc. I just don't see... I was having a chat with somebody this morning about this, of City have got 5 Premier League titles in a row, so I'm with City to win this because City know how to get over the finishing line and Arsenal don't. And that's the reason why I'm putting City ahead of them. City have got the best side in the Premier League right now, and they have the winning nature to be able to get it done. And Arsenal still don't have that. And that's the only reason that I can separate these two in terms of a title race. I think it will still be close. I don't think it will be as close as last season, however. I think City will win it maybe with 2 weeks to go or something like that. But it's the first 2 games of the season. I mean, City smashing 4 past Ipswich and being 3-1 up after 16 minutes. Does that mean anything to this campaign? No. Does Arsenal's victory against Villa might mean something on the road against a Villa side, but for Villa, the hardest thing for them to do is to do what they did last season, because it's easy to have that one season where you make the leap up. And going back to your point that Carragher made, the hardest thing is to keep improving. And Villa are going to find that out this season, that you can make that leap, but we've seen so many clubs make a leap into that sort of level. It wasn't long ago we were thinking about Everton fighting for the Europa League. Ipswich have been there under George Burley and went to Europe, and then 3 seasons later are back down in the second tier of English football. Leicester City won a Premier League title and were in the Champions League, and 4 years later are fighting relegation. So you can make those leaps, however emphatic they are, to get up to European football sort of levels. Staying there is far more difficult, and I think that's the problem that Villa are going to find this season. So second week of the season, I don't take Arsenal's result as look, they're vanquishing Villa on home soil. This is an even better side than last year or anything like that. I'm not hyperbolic, Dave. You know me. I can't jump on this like City have got the title.
Well, I am hyperbolic, Ollie, and I was watching the Arsenal game, and like Villa had chances, mate. Arsenal could have dropped points, and honestly, my finger was hovering over the WhatsApp to a couple of Arsenal mates, being like, "Title's gone." Like if they lost that game, I would have sent a couple of WhatsApps being like, "Title race is over," because because the run-in now starts on the first weekend of the season, because it's just so insane. Let me ask you this: if Arsenal are going to win the league, do they have to beat City home and away? Like I agree with you. I think City will win the league, but in a world, let's just envisage a world where Mikel, the pickpocket Arteta, has got the Premier League trophy in May. Like in that world, Ollie, before that, do Arsenal have to? I mean, at the very least, they need 4 points in those 2 games, right? At the very least. But do they realistically have to go to the Etihad and win and then beat them at the Emirates as well?
I personally don't think so. I think even if they did beat City at the Emirates and at home, I still think they could end up losing the title to City. Like I just see it.
Do they have to? As in what?
I just see there's a fallibility. If they're to win it, maybe they do. I think the thing actually for City that gives Arsenal hope more than anything else is the number of games that City will have to be playing in again this season. I mean, Arsenal are going to have a similar problem, I suppose. I think, yeah, I don't know. To win the title, do they have to beat City home and away? Probably not. But that's because at least the Premier League is so competitive. There's enough big sides with money out there that are able to cause a problem. So I don't think Arsenal need to. 3 points would be a good place to be after those 2 games. Win at home, try and get a result away. But I think there's enough quality in the Premier League this season that City could stumble, an overworked City side. Somebody was saying today that they thought they were a bit of an aging side now. De Bruyne is like 33, etc. I wouldn't go too far, but I could understand that point. And tired legs, older legs will feel the brunt of the blow a little bit more than Arsenal. I think Arsenal just need a centre forward as well, though. If Arsenal had half a Haaland, you would be so much more confident about them getting over the line.
Why hasn't he done that then? Why hasn't he bought Ivan Toney? Why hasn't he bought Osimhen? There's obviously a reason. He doesn't feel... I guess when you're at the level that Arsenal are, you have to buy what? Just a completely elite, ready-made number 9 that can come in and score a shitload of Premier League goals. Otherwise, what's the point? Mm-hmm. So does he look at Ivan Toney and think, not good enough? Does he look at Osimhen and be like, can he do it in the Premier League? Does he look at, I don't know, help me out, other number 9s around Europe and think, oh...
There aren't that many.
No.
I was chatting with Dave Farrer about this weekend, name drop, but we were saying, like, having an out centre forward.
Don't worry, no one knows who. Like, it's not Ant and Deck, mate. Like, people like that's very in industry chat. Like, name drop.
And it's only because I think it's only because I revered him, to be honest, more than anything else. So, I don't see many. Ruud van Nistelrooy has been brought into Manchester. Who is the Ruud van Nistelrooy around European football at this point? You'd argue it was Harry Kane. He won't go to Arsenal, so that's not going to happen. It's weird, actually, how Harry Kane's name doesn't automatically come into your head when you think about, like, you meant to mention Victor Osimhen, for instance. Like, Kane should be the first one off your lips, really, as an out-and-out centre-forward. But a bad Euros and not winning anything in Germany, and suddenly the stock diminishes a little bit. And he's out of the Premier League, and he's in a league that's barely shown on UK TV, which doesn't help either. But, I don't see... That's not a style of football that's in vogue, really, at all. And a more fluid front three, almost, is what people would rather have. I don't know if Kai Havertz is the guy to lead Arsenal to a title. He might bang 30 goals in now, and I'll be eating my words, but...
He won't, though.
Yeah,
I like him, but he's not scoring 30
Jorge Jesus would be great, but he's injured. And that's the trouble now. He's injury prone. So...
Gabriel Jesus.
That's Jorge Jesus.
Wilson's Libertad. Jorge, look him up, guys. He won the title. He won the Copa Libertadores with Flamengo in 2019. Surely you remember him, did some stuff in Portugal.
He looks like a Portuguese Gareth Ainsworth, Jorge Jesus. With the long hair.
Decent, very decent shot. Yeah. I always liked his style. All right.
Can we quickly do the...
anything else in the Premier League?
Yeah, the fucking idiot at Chelsea. Putting out that Instagram
Madueke.
post. Yeah.
So what did he say? He said Wolverhampton Wanderers was shit.
No, he said he put on his Instagram the night before the game, everything in this place is shit with the location of Wolverhampton. And it's like... It's such
not.
Just act like a grown-up.
Have you been to Wolves?
Yeah, I've been to Wolverhampton. Yeah. I used to date a girl who lived up that way, kind of thing. And I used to do a lot of work at the Molineux when I was. Look, you're not going to say it's London or anything like that, is it? But I just think it's such an unnecessarily stupid thing to put out, and I think that's what frustrates me more than anything else. The way I termed it to somebody... We need a complete
shutdown, Ollie. We need a complete shutdown of footballers running their own social media accounts until we can figure out what the hell's going on.
You're a professional. Act professional. Dave, you wouldn't, the day before, say, going to work at Sky, put on your social media account, God, that Sky Monday Night Football was fucking shite, wasn't it? Oh, that was terrible. No, you just keep your mouth shut. You go in and do your job if that's what you really thought. It isn't, because they do a really good job of breaking down and analysing the weekend's action anyway on the Monday Night Football show. But... you are a professional footballer, and it comes with carrying yourself because you are representing your football club, you're representing the Premier League. I mean, that's the worst thing for Wolves fans, isn't it? It's absolutely horrible that he's put that up. There's been the backlash, he's booed all game, and he sticks 3 past them. He's asked about it after the game, and he laughs. And he just doesn't care. Care.
But Ollie, you know how superstitious footballers are? So maybe like when they're away at like... wherever Newcastle next, he does it every week. Also, that would lessen the impact because you can't get offended about something if someone's just firing zingers about every town. So if every week he says everything in Newcastle shit, I'd really respect that, and I'd say this is up there with Zuckerberg's PR transformation. If Madueke could pull this off.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, it's fucking stupid, but he's a kid, isn't he? I don't know, like it's fucking stupid, but I don't know. It's what can you say?
It's so unnecessary. That's the thing that's weird to me more than anything else. Is like just just being sat there in a hotel, and you literally are so bored that all you can think to do is to post a plain black screen that just says everything in this place is shit. Like, that screams of a man that kind of hates his life almost. Like, you'd worry about one of your mates if they just put that
You're
up.
too deep.
I don't know.
You're too deep, Ollie. I think it's just like, bloody hell. Like, people are so sensitive about their hometowns, myself included. If someone's like, London's a shithole and this, that, and the other, I'd probably defend it. But equally, like, yeah, like, kind of is. Like, London's a shithole. Like, maybe Wolves a shithole. Paris is a shithole. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what do people want? The guy sat in his hotel. I rate the fact that there was just the black screen because it's just so, like, it's like an obituary. Like, you should just put R.I.P. Wolves. Yeah, look, it's fucking stupid. I don't know, like, if there's any more to overanalyze about it. It's just like you're a kid.
I just don't like
I'm assuming
it.
he's young. He's super young, isn't he?
Yeah, I just don't like it, though.
Must be
22.
Yeah, I mean,
not that young.
22, like.
I knew at 22 not to put stuff
like,
on Twitter and Instagram and things like that. I think a lot of us did, to be honest.
I don't think I did.
Really?
But at 22, man, what do you know at 22? You're just fucking figuring out, like, you don't know anything. You're
Dude,
all
yeah,
over
but
the place
I know
at
that
22.
every single thing that you put out into that ether is saved on a server somewhere for somebody to drag it up.
At 22, I didn't know that because we didn't know that, did we? Like, it's back in the day. Like, he should know that because, you know, he knows about the exposure of social media. But, yeah. Anything else in the Premier League, Ollie?
Not especially. I mean, I'm not taking anything with too much of a pinch of salt. Like, Tottenham were great 45 minutes and terrible for the second half against Leicester, and then got it right for 90 minutes against a terrible Everton side that looked like they could potentially be in trouble this season from the word go. I'm not going all in on United or anything.
They're fucked.
Yeah.
Everton are fucked on and off the pitch. They're absolutely fucked. Like, I don't know what happens there next. Man, what a club with so much history, and you know, I lived in the city for years, and like, I don't know. It's a really, if you're an Everton fan, like, you've got to be pretty worried about what's going to happen to your football club because there's no guarantees anymore. There's absolutely no guarantees. Like, you just got this new stadium as well. Like, how is that going to work? You've got no money. You're in debt. You don't have an owner. Like, and you're going down to the Championship. Like, I don't know. Like, if Sean Dyche can turn this around, then if Sean Dyche can keep them up this year, it's
more impressive than getting Burnley into the Premier League and keeping Burnley in the Premier League if he keeps them up this season, for sure. But also, I think if you were to want a manager that might be able to fight to keep you up, Sean Dyche is probably the manager that you'd want. Although,
yeah, very true.
Not to sound
against the wall.
Not to sound too xenophobic or anything like that, but I think he would galvanise a British team, if you know what I mean, like that backs against the wall kind of hard grafty type thing. I don't know if it works in the modern day kind of Premier League era anyway, where people are just kind of like hired mercenaries, whatever. Like most footballers are anyway, British or not. But yeah, if you had a few players that had some actual links, strong links in that side, then I think Dyche has got a better chance of kind of galvanising them and getting them out.
Ollie, let's wrap. Let's talking a bit about sporting memorabilia. We'll finish with that, but let's fill this sector of the pod with where Windsor's knowledge kind of melts away a little bit, and Ollie Wilson could talk about any other sport, which I'm rapidly trying to educate myself on. I know there's a couple of things, Ollie, you want to talk about, so the floor's all yours, mate, and I'll chip in where my knowledge is up to scratch.
Well, I just wanted to ask you a question about this. There's a really weird format on the PGA Tour this year. I mean, it's been in place for a number of years now, but all of your PGA Tour victories throughout the year get tallied up, and they equate to a certain number of points, and bigger tournaments earn you more points. And that goes into what's called the FedEx Cup standings. And then at the end of the year, you have the race for the FedEx Cup. So the top 70 at the end of the PGA Tour season go into a 4-day competition. If you can get yourself into the top 50 of the FedEx Cup rankings, so you don't have to finish 50th in that tournament, you could finish 60th in that tournament. But if finishing 60th, you leapfrog enough people to go into the top 50 of the overall standings, you make it into the next week that we've just had the BMW Championship. And then the BMW Championship, again, if you can get into the top 30, you then go to the race for the FedEx Cup finale at Eastlake next week. So like the guy that won this weekend on the BMW Championship, he's gone from 49th up to, I think it's 6th in the FedEx Cup standings with that victory this weekend. So he'll be going to Eastlake in the top 30. And then the top players next week at Eastlake, the leader of the FedEx Cup standings is Scotty Scheffler, who will start at 12 under. second place will start at 10 under, third place will start at 8 under, and it kind of rolls down like that. So some players will have a 12-shot advantage over other players or an 8-shot advantage over other players before a golf ball's even been hit. And Scotty Scheffler's come out and said, look, whether I win or not at Eastlake, it doesn't feel like that's who's won the season of golf, if you will. And to put it into a footballing kind of frame, it's a bit like Major League Soccer has a league, and you win a shield for winning the league aspect of it, but then the top teams from each conference go into the playoffs, and everybody wants to win the MLS Cup. But the best team in the league season is the team that won that league. It's just the best team over 5 games of the playoffs that gets actually the big trophy, which is the MLS Cup. And golf's a bit like that at this point as well. And Scheffler's kind of said, look, I've won 7 tournaments this season. I have been the best golfer this year. I've won 7 tournaments and a major. I'm the best golfer this year. So whether I win at Eastlake or not, it doesn't really matter. And it isn't a reflection of who's been the best golfer of the year, basically. I just thought it was interesting that you're seeing like the best guy in the world is clapping back at a system that isn't necessarily going to potentially reward him. If he loses at Eastlake, even though he starts with 12 shots under par already, it doesn't really show that golf is kind of getting the end of season finale right.
Is your question to me like, what do I think of the format?
Yeah, do you think
I've got an answer.
Yeah, do you think golf should have a slightly better, should be run as like a league season and it just finishes with if you're at the top of the leaderboard by the end of the year, top of the leaderboard? Or do you like this idea of having these kind of weird leagues that mean nothing just to get you into a playoff, basically?
Simplicity scales, complexity fails. Ollie, in that description, nothing to do with your intonation or content because it was magnificent, but in that description, you lost the TikTok generation. You lost me. I've already scrolled past. I'm looking at a lion attacking a giraffe on my feed, or a dog being greeted by the veteran after 3 years. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm gone. Like I'm gone.
It's not a 1 minute clip. I get you.
These days. No, but like what I'm saying is that's not your fault. You're trying to you love the sport and you're trying to explain something to an outsider. And if you're having trouble with that as someone that understands and loves the sport, like we've got problems. Because the aim of most sports is to attract the fair weather fans and get more fans in, right? And just as I go back to it, simplicity scales, complexity fails. The more complicated you make your sport, the trickier it is to have a wider audience. It's why football has been so globally successful, because it's so simple and the currency of a goal is so pure. So I think that the more complicated you make stuff, it's more difficult to sell it. I think it's true in sport and it's true of everything. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's just it's weird how, because golf is a sport that goes against the grain of we should be in a TikTok generation type thing a lot of the time, doesn't it? It's a patient man's game in every sense of the word, and women's game. We had the AIG Women's Open taking place at St Andrews this weekend. 6.5 hours to do a round of golf up there because of the wind conditions, and that slows down play a lot. And there's a lot of shared greens and all this kind of thing up at St Andrews, the home of golf. It's iconic. I'd love to spend another 6.5 hours up at St Andrews, but it is.
Check out Wilson's pod, by the way. Can I plug your solo golf pod, Ollie? Because I really liked it. It's really nice, like.
It's not ready
it's
yet. It's
nice
man.
listening though, man. It's nice, but like, yeah, okay. Well, I've seen a few, but it's out there for public consumption if you want it.
Yeah, the road.
Because I know a couple of the boys that listen to this pod. Yeah, like there you go. It's we'll maybe put it in the link in the bio, because a couple of people that listen to this pod are big golf fans, I know. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm ready to be ranting on my own about golf just yet. I'm still getting into the game.
No, I liked it.
My knowledge is not strong enough. But yeah, I mean, but going back to it, golf is like going against the grain of most sports. It's not about a TikTok generation. It's about tradition. It's about playing a long game. You want to play. The toughest thing to do is to play 4 days in a row and play consistent golf. That's why we like having golf victors after 4 days of competition rather than just one round, etc. So it seems weird that they've then created what seems like a very modern style of let's have a playoff and everything leads to a final, like in a lot of US sports, obviously. But then it's still such a long-winded, complex thing. I won't even go into the complexities of the season this year about how like there's the Super 10 that have been able to get in the top 50, outside of the top 50, get a super special opportunity to play in various competitions that give them more chances for FedEx points. And even I at the beginning of this year, with all these changes made, was like, what is going on? But this FedEx Cup thing's been around for a long time, and it's just interesting to see the biggest golfer in the world right now clapping back at it, because normally golfers don't tend to question that as much, I think, as well. I think it tends to be, you toe a nice line, particularly with the PGA. You want to be on the right side of them at the moment, etc. But yeah, that's me shoehorning some golf in for the week. And there was a couple of other things about some NBA players saying that, like, back in the day, basketball wasn't as technically sound and the players weren't as good, and Michael Jordan is kind of overrated and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, the physicality alone of like 80s, 90s basketball, where if you went inside into the paint, so to speak, inside the 3-point line, like elbows are flying, you're getting battered fists and forearms down on your back and head and things like that, and people are grabbing you by the neck to prevent you from getting up to the hoop easily and stuff like that. I think modern day sportsmen just don't have a clue about how
I was going to say,
rough around the edges
that's
old
true in
sport
basketball,
was.
right? Like,
Yeah.
80s, 90s was super physical, and same with like so many sports, right?
Yeah.
Football and.
There are some challenges
What?
in football these days where you're like,
Yeah.
that's a yellow.
It's not
Really?
foul.
It's not. It's so fair. And then you go back and see like a game that David and Ollie was reffing back in the day, and it's like Vinnie Jones scything people 2-footed down. He's like, "Yep, yellow card, Vinny. Yep, yellow." It's like, are you kidding me? People get arrested for that on a football field now. Professional footballers are being sent to court.
Huge bans.
GBH. Yeah.
Yeah. No, crazy.
Right. Let's spend some money then, Windsor, if you want to talk about football memorabilia and
Well, I
sporting
want to talk about
memorabilia.
sports memorabilia because, I do. It's a shame I don't have Diego Maradona's signed hand of God behind me. So I own pretty much a couple of bits, but like I own one bit of sporting memorabilia, and it's Diego Maradona's hand of God signed by Diego Maradona and Peter Shilton. And it's probably like one of my favorite things. I take joy in it every time I look at it because it's so iconic. And I know, Ollie, you're a big sports memorabilia fan, right? Like, you can't see this now because we're on pod 10, but when we're on pod 70, Ollie will like have his house set up, and you'll have all the memorabilia behind you and the nice lighting and the rest of it. Ollie, I know you're a big fan of sports memorabilia. The reason I'm talking about this is because the highest ever sum was paid for a piece of sporting memorabilia, 18.1 million. Babe Ruth's cooled shot jersey sells for record 18.1 during the 1932 World Series. I mean, that's so much money. I got two questions, Ollie. One, why do you love sporting memorabilia? And two, is it less about a decadent rich person wanting a bit of sporting memorabilia, and it's actually just a good financial place to put your money? You know how like Lego or like comics like outstrips the FTSE 100 over the last 20 years or whatever ridiculous stat it is? Is it just actually just a smart investment to buy signed sporting memorabilia or sporting memorabilia in general?
I hate this everything's an investment aspect that we're kind of getting into with a lot of things. Like, I've got a friend who collects whiskey. Whiskey's now an investment. That's where you want to be putting your money into. Wine is kind of similar in that sense. Projected annual revenue increase of around about 10% on all of these things. Like, I get it, but not everything has to be looked at in dollar signs. And that's why I love sporting memorabilia, because I don't collect actually things like jerseys that are player worn, or I don't think I've got anything that's I've bought specifically because it's like signed by somebody or anything like that. I tend to have shirts from clubs that I like and eras that I like, and maybe the odd poster and stuff from events that I've been to and programs from events as kind of my sporting memorabilia more than anything else. But I do like having them because there is we get emotional about sport, right? As fans, as broadcasters, it just clicks with us for some reason. And I think that almost feels like that there is an attachment to that emotion that you feel, because sporting emotion is different for every single incident that you have. It's in the same way that there's no snowflake is the same, right? No reaction to a goal is identical. There's different levels of adrenaline, of endorphin that come from it. And I think that by having a piece of sporting memorabilia that takes you back to that, it's almost an attempt to hold on and retain the feeling in that moment. Like, I have an AC Milan shirt, which is the shirt that they wore when they beat Juventus on penalties at Old Trafford to win the Champions League. And I was at that game, and it's got Gattuso number 10 on the back. number 8 on the back. And whenever I see that shirt, I still have it. It doesn't fit, but I still have it. It reminds me of an incredibly special footballing night that I had. And although it can't replicate the endorphins and the dopamine from that evening, it's a reminder of what that felt like. Similarly, the Super Bowl balls that I have from the games that I got to commentate on out in the USA, it's just a piece of that emotion. It's like a Horcrux for Harry Potter fans. It's like taking a little bit of you and putting it inside that piece of sporting memorabilia. That's why I like sporting memorabilia.
Oh, that's beautiful, Ollie. No snowflake being the same, comparing that to goal celebrations is that's Mr. Oliver Wilson at his best. Yeah, it's interesting. But okay, so yeah, I can't top anything there. I'll just say that, yeah, the one thing I own is the Maradona hand of God. And I was born in 86, so that's when it happened. So I can't claim any like immediate emotional reaction to it. But I just love it because it's just the most brazen act of cheating you've ever seen. I love that Maradona cared enough to cheat. I think there's something in that. Like he was prepared to sacrifice his entire personal reputation for his country winning a World Cup. Like, he didn't give a fuck. It was about winning. And I do think there's something to that. And I think also, since VAR's come in, I love the fact, Ollie, that if football's played for another 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, VAR will always be a part of the sport now. There will never, ever, ever be an act of brazen cheating like that. And I just think it was, and he's a fucking tiny man. He's 5'5" or 5'6", and he out jumps Shilton. Like, it's just crazy. And then to say afterwards, it's part of the hand of Diego and part of the hand of God. It's just, it is like, it's the Madueke of 86, mate. It's just like the fuck you. I'm going to do what I want.
At least we know that's so a handball. That's a very easy one to give as well. At least we know. We know that one's a handball. You can ask Bournemouth fans what they think a handball is after this weekend.
Well, let's talk about that momentarily, but Ollie, is it not, by the way, the commentary, if anyone's ever listened to the live comms of Diego Maradona's hand of God, it's amazing, Ollie, because this is in an era where there's probably no monitor. The commentator's in the ground, and he's trying to call it as offside. And I feel for the commentator because he doesn't know what's going on. The players are appealing. There's no VAR. And he's saying, "Oh, I think the defenders are calling for offside," and he kind of almost is offside as well. He's not, and then it's the hand of God. Yeah. By the way, I think it hits the shoulder, man. The Bournemouth goal.
Yeah, I think it's the shoulder and the arm. I think it's hit both. I think it's right on that line.
You know what we need?
Could be either or.
You know what we need? Every football shirt from now needs to have a line separating where the shoulder starts and ends. Because, with VAR now, if we have on every shirt, we have a line, then we'll know where the shoulder starts and ends. Otherwise, we're just guessing. I don't know, Do you know what I mean? I don't know what is, where does the shoulder end, Ollie? Like, this isn't. Do you know? Where would you say the shoulder ends?
You can't put that line definitively on a shirt because you'd have to put it on every single game differently for every single player because every single player has different size shoulders. For instance, like, what if my shoulder muscle? What if my shoulder muscle is jacked and actually
tattoo it?
Yeah. Or we do the Cameroon sleeveless shirts.
Adama Traore.
Sleeveless shirts, and every football player has a tattoo where their shoulder ends. And it's a semi-permanent one, so we can get rid of it if they get bigger and their shoulder gets bigger. But football is now a sleeveless sport, and we get a mark on the shoulder. That will solve the handball problem.
And the Adama Traore is like halfway down his arm because his shoulders are just absolutely popping. That is the only logical solution to fix the handball issue. Sleeveless shirts with semi-permanent tattoos to mark the end of his shoulder.
Can I just go back to this Babe Ruth thing quickly, right? Because it's interesting. My reason for sporting memorabilia and your reason for the piece of sporting memorabilia that you're own are very different, obviously. And this Babe Ruth one, obviously the called shot is kind of that. Nobody, I think, at this point...
Can you explain that to us, Ollie? Could you explain that to me?
So Babe Ruth's a baseball player, one of the greatest early baseball players of all time. He still holds records for various hitting records in Major League Baseball. And it's in the World Series, and Babe Ruth calls his shot where he points to the stand where he's going to hit his own home run, and then he hits it and hits a home run. And it has transcended baseball because it's been used in so many pieces of pop culture. There's a very good Simpsons bit where in The Simpsons, Homer is playing for his local baseball team and he points to the stand, hits a home run into the stand on the other side, and then just changes his hand to point to where the ball's just gone. It's a wonderfully small, cute reference to Babe Ruth. And there aren't going to be many or almost any people, I think, around now who can... I don't know when this was called, actually, when he did this.
32?
So yes, the
32,
chance
I think,
the chance of
1932.
anybody buying this who's got a recollection of the moment is slim to none. So you don't have that moment of, I'm buying this because this is how that moment made me feel. So you're buying this if you are spending the ludicrous amount of money on the Babe Ruth shirt for either a financial reason, or you're buying it because your attachment to the sport is so great and your love of it is so strong that you are desperate to have something so iconic from the sport, because it is an iconic moment in baseball history and Babe Ruth is an iconic player. And I really hope it's the latter rather than the former. And it's not somebody going, ooh, I'll buy that because that'll be worth more when I sell it in 30 years' time. And it's actually somebody that buys it. It's like when people buy World Cup winners' medals and stuff like that. I always think that's really sad because you've bought something that actually probably has and will have later on a huge emotional attachment to somebody else. And I kind of like the idea of when people like sell it back to them for the same price that they bought it from them for and stuff like that later on, because I think it's always better to have that for the right reasons as opposed to having it for the financial reason of I've got something that is going to be worth something later on when it comes to sport. But again, that's just me being the purist more than anything else to do with sports fandom.
Ollie, I just wanted to read off what the guy at the auction house said, because I think it's kind of pretty. He said, director of sports auctions at Heritage Auction called it the most significant piece of American sports memorabilia ever offered at auction. If this was a piece of art, it would be like buying the Mona Lisa. So there you go.
And
Don't know who's bought it. Probably some Qatari royal family.
That's a great investment for me, because I'll be able to sell that for an extra 10% in a few years' time, won't I? I mean, it's just, you want when somebody.
But they won't though. Whoever bought that, Ollie, can't, like, I get the resale value thing, but as you correctly point out, it was so long ago that in 100 years, that's not going to be worth more than it is now, surely. Because Babe Ruth's memory, like, inevitably history does chip away at stuff, don't you think?
No, because history also...
You think it's worth more in 100 years?
Yeah, history also glamorizes stuff even more. Rarity and time increase the value of pretty much everything. You look at whiskies, you look at anything. You know, oh, there were 100 of these made. Well, now there's only 50 in existence. All right, well, that's now tripled in value for whatever reason. That's why everybody...
Don't get me started on there only being 21 million in Bitcoin in the world, Ollie. We can't make this into a crypto pod. Yeah, no, I take your point there. I take your point. As in 21. Yeah.
If you could own anything similar to Babe Ruth's jersey, what would be the thing that you would most like to own? If money's no object, what would you pay money for to own as a piece of sporting memorabilia?
Honestly, my favorite sporting moment of all time, outside of like my own club, is Diego Maradona's Hand of God. But I'll give you one, Ollie. At Queen's, a men's tennis tournament about 15 years ago, David Nalbandian, an Argentine tennis player, was pissed off with a line call and he kicked the line judge. And if it had happened now, they'd be like, uproar, he would have been banned for 5 years. He actually kicks the advertising hoarding, which goes in to the line judge's knee. And the line judge it's not funny, but the line judge starts bleeding from the leg down. And he pulls up his trousers and shows that there's blood going down the leg. The trousers of that line judge with the blood stain on them, I'd quite like as a bit of sporting memorabilia. And I reckon I could get it as well, because no one else in the world wants that. I wonder if I could track down the line judge. And I wonder if he kept the trousers he cleaned, didn't probably dry clean them straight away. But I just think it's the funniest, one of the funniest. Sorry, it is funny. Like, it's one of the funniest sporting moments ever, because he kicks the advertising hoarding, which kicks the line judge. The line judge is bleeding. Nalbandian gets disqualified. Then his post-match press conference, David Nalbandian tried to blame how busy the ATP tour was on his behavior. He tried to be like, oh, there's so many matches now. And it's like, yeah, mate, you still just don't kick the line judge, though. I don't care how many matches there are. Anyway, that's super niche. What about you?
I think I'd really like the Del Piero shirt that he scored the goal in against Germany in the World Cup semi-final. There's something, and like the match worn shirt, there's something about that moment, because it was the day that we finished our exams at school. It was an evening where we went down the pub and we were watching it in a Wetherspoons, and obviously there's no sound in the Wetherspoons on the TV or anything like that, but they had the football on. And I've never heard a pub go that crazy for a goal when it wasn't an England game or a Premier League game or something like that. The place exploded as if Del Piero was one of us. And obviously I've got a huge attachment with Italian football since my early ages and stuff like that. And so it was like a perfect night where there was so much stress from exams had been taken off the shoulders. Obviously, you don't know your results yet, but God, it feels good to at least have them done and work out maybe if you're going to go to university or what you're going to do with your life after that. But there's that stress-free evening where everybody's relaxed watching the football with your mates, and then the pub explodes, because that goal is so perfect as well to me, of the perfect amount of bend that he opens up his body and sends it into the far corner. And it's almost as good. The two celebrations from Del Piero and Fabio Grosso that evening are almost as good as the Tardelli 82 celebration. They're up there, and there's something great that they've all come from Italian footballers as well. So I think that would be the one for me.
Can I change my answer, Ollie? I'd like the mobile phone used by Madueke when he posts that post on Instagram about Wolves being a shithole.